Now the Tesla Model X is pretty much dead here in Australia. You can't order a large luxury SUV from Tesla anymore. Instead, you have to buy the Tesla Model Y. So if you own a Tesla Model X or you're thinking about getting one, what can you get instead? Well, Audi has an answer for you. It's this. This is the Audi e-tron S Sportback. It's a sexy looking SUV that has a triple motor setup and it's from Audi. This also wears the S badge, making it the fastest electric SUV you can buy from Audi. And for the most part, it's a brilliant car, except it has one small flaw. Now this EV will set you back $175,400 before on roads as a starting price. Now, if you want to tick a few options, you can easily price this thing over $190,000. So what are you getting when you spend that much money on a luxury electric car wearing an Audi badge? Well, for starters, you get some pretty nice LED lights. These are very dynamic lights, and what I found very interesting is that when you accelerate at night with a bit of pace and the car will pitch up, these lights will pitch down to make sure the road is fully lit at all times. So these are very advanced LED lights, and plus they look quite good. You have some headlight washers here and lots of aero up front. Here on the sides, here down with more side vents as well, and there's gaping big vent down below here. Now, of course, our Audi badge is in our iconic silver, but we also do have e-tron stamped into the front bumper here, and a little S to let everyone know that this is the slightly faster e-tron SUV. And unlike other manufacturers who have built electric SUVs, Audi have blocked off the grille sort of, but they still give you a grille design with some vents that actually go somewhere. So for an electric car, this actually looks quite like a petrol car. Now under the hood here, you do have 60 liters of boot space, which is quite useful, or frunk space or fruit space, whatever you want to call it. But there is 60 liters of storage space under here, and you can lock it up so water and debris won't get inside. Now, I absolutely adore the charging door design on the e-tron. Look, it electronically folds out and it's here on the front fender instead of the more conventional place over on the rear, which I really appreciate because you can put these charging ports anywhere, which means we also get another one. That's right, in true Audi fashion, they've given you another charge port, except over on the right side is the fast charger, but over on here is a slower charger. But at least it gives you two options for when you park in your garage, which is most likely when you're gonna want to charge on either side. But when you go to fast charge, you have to charge using that right-hand side port. Now check it out, you get 22-inch wheels on this e-tron, which looks so good. And what's even cooler is that we get 399mm front brakes. They're huge, they're almost bigger than the wheels on my Fiat 500 Abarth. And I also love the yellow brake calipers and of course the yellow accenting we get on this e-tron badge on the side. It reminds me a little bit of a Lamborghini Urus. Now our e-tron has normal mirrors here, but you can fit camera mirrors, but I've heard mixed reactions from how useful those camera mirrors are. So if you like conventional mirrors, this is what they'll look like. But towards the back here is why you've bought an e-tron Sportback. That's what this coupe design is called. Now this e-tron is not going to be called the e-tron for long, it's going to be called the Q8, so it's going to be like a Q8 coupe, but this thing looks fantastic. And as for the suspension, this car comes with air suspension, which is really quite cool. So you can raise it up like this, or you can lower it down into dynamic mode, which really hunkers it down, gives you a bit more stability when cornering. Now I love the proportions of this Audi SUV. It's got really nice rear haunches here on this Sportback, and I think the Sportback is the model I would choose over the normal e-tron SUV. There's a little lip here on the roof for aerodynamics. There's no rear wiper, but you do have a pretty pronounced rear boot lip spoiler. Now this giant light bar you see running across the back looks fantastic at night, and I think really complements the width of this thing and really accentuates that. You've also got an e-tron S badge here to let everyone know that you spent the most amount of money on an e-tron SUV, and the fact that this is the fastest model you can get. But I really like how clean that diffuser is at the back as well. Now as for this paint color, I don't think I would choose black because it's showing a lot of swirl marks here. Sure, you could look after it, but it's just something that's going to show after a while if you're just treating it like a normal car. So instead I'd go for a more unique and maybe slightly brighter color. Now here in the back, you get 555 liters of boot space. If you fold the seats down in a 40-20-40 split, you can get 1,594 liters of boot space. You have a hard parcel shelf here, you have a 12-volt socket, you have some netting on the side, you have another cargo net tied to some nice metal eye hooks, and then underneath the boot floor here, you do have a spare tire. That's great news, and it's a surprise to see on an electric car because a lot of them go without one. Now, underneath here as well, you do have a nice amount of space to be able to store maybe even something like a backpack, because there's a huge deep space back here. So even though you're getting the cooler looking SUV, you're not really compromising on practicality. Now, what's strange about these doors is that they have handles, but you can tell that it's actually like a button to release an actuator to actually open the door. It's not a traditional handle. So when you pull on it, it pops the door. So it's a bit of a weird sensation. Now back here in these rear seats, I'm 5'11", I have plenty of feet room, decent amount of knee room, and I've also got plenty of headroom thanks to some sculpting here in the rear. Now if I even extend myself a little bit more, it will get a little bit tight, but if you're 6'1", 6'2", it shouldn't be too bad back here. Now we got 2 USB charging ports back here, the USB Type-C, a 12-volt socket, and we have quad zone climate controls back here. So I've got my own temperature controls, my own fan controls for my side of the seat here in the back. Now we have a center armrest here, which have some pretty cool cup holders which pop open like that, but they're not very big. We have some center storage here as well, but it's a bit shallow, but at least you have some. Now, what's interesting is that this middle seat is pretty tight, even though this is a fully electric SUV. The load floor here in the back is a little bit raised, which is kind of interesting. So it means you don't get a ton of feet room if you sit in the middle seat, but at least you have easy access to your ISOFIX points back here, and you have some netting here as well. You have decent amounts of room here in the side of the doors, and I also do like this Alcantara suede type material on the doors here, and we also get a dedicated air vent, so you're not going to have to worry about sharing air vents just here in the middle. Now we do have a panoramic glass roof, but it sort of stops around here, so it doesn't go back around my head, which some people might like, and so they don't have to worry about it being too bright, and you can close it halfway like it is now to sort of provide a bit more darkness here in the back. But now let's talk about this interior. This is one of the best interiors I've sat in for an electric car. I'm sorry, Tesla fanboys, but that single big screen is fine, but this just feels far more refined, and I like the mix of technology and also conventional layout, which makes this a really familiar and easy to use setup, and you don't really need anything too complicated. The only thing that is a little bit annoying is that if you want to charge and sit in your car, you can't really watch any movies or use any Netflix or anything like that, or do any sort of webcam calls like you can on some other electric cars if you want to join a Zoom call, for example, if you're going to work and you need to charge on the way. But passing those bits and pieces, let's talk about this screen here. It's so useful. I can use it while I'm driving very easily. It's got all the basic functions that I need in it. It has radio, media, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and you have basic information about your car. There's nothing overcomplicated here, and you even have access to things like weather, which was very useful for when I was driving here because it meant that I could check out the weather when I was checking my film schedule for the week, which I really quite like. Now down here, this screen I thought was like a little bit fiddly at first, but then what I really appreciated was this palm rest. This palm rest here is quite interesting. I thought it was part of the shifter, but it's not. The shifter is this little piece here which you can just push up and down, and you know, it's pretty easy to use and it's quite nice and luxurious to interact with. But then this is a palm rest, make it easier to hit your drive select buttons, things like your volume knob, and even your climate controls, which I like quite a lot. So it means you have to hover your hand and sort of have it bounce around around the place when you need to adjust things for your climate controls. Now the screen in front of me is a virtual cockpit from Audi. It's pretty standard. You've got a couple of different views, and I really like the refresh rate and the contrast, and it's just a beautiful screen to look at. I really quite like it. And we have a heads-up display here as well, and I can say the build quality here is pretty good, but as you can hear, a few rattles just making themselves known. Now, I really like the e-tron badge up here on the dashboard, and I really love the lights here at night. It's got a really cool feel at night, and it completely transforms the feel of this cabin. They have all the storage down here as well, some cup holders, and you also have that wireless phone charger here, which pins your phone against it. It has a little clip there, making it one of the best wireless phone chargers I've tested ever. I really quite like that. It goes right next to the Hyundai Santa Fe, which also has a vertical slot, which I think more cars should use, because I think the tray just does not work because your phone always slides around since the car is always moving. Now these seats I'm sitting in are also like a bucket seat design. They have quilted leather and they're so comfortable. I have no complaints about them at all. They even have very decently plush headrests. And look, this is a very beautiful cabin, and it's something when you step into it, you're going, yep. The amount of money I spent on this car, which yes is over $170,000, it definitely feels like a cabin that matches that, which is very important for this segment because some people don't really feel that Tesla's price point for something like the Model X matches the high asking price that those cars command. And look, even things like the suede on the doors, the sound insulation, and the 15-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system in here all just go so beautifully with this car, and I really love spending time inside this thing, and it really feels like I'm being looked after in here. Now this is a really fun electric SUV to drive. It has a triple motor setup and it has 2 electric motors at the back. It means it has a thing called e-quattro, is what Audi likes to call this synthetic all-wheel drive system. Now what's really cool is that those 2 motors at the back can shuffle the torque between the 2 wheels at the rear to mean that you get optimal amounts of power delivery through high speed cornering, which is insane. So as I go through here in this heavy SUV and I sort of hook it up into a corner, those external back wheels are going to push harder than the ones on the inside. And if the inside ones need a bit more grip as well, it can shuffle the power so quickly, making it an excellent all-wheel drive system. Now this isn't ultra rapid like a Tesla Model X Plaid, for example, but it does have a launch control system, which Audi calls boost mode. So you can see here on your rev counter, you've got how much power you're using out of your battery, and then you have an extra bit percentage past 100%, which is boost mode, which means you'll get over 500 horsepower on delivery and just under 1,000 Newton meters of torque for your launch, which means it'll take your launch time down to 4.5 seconds. Now, your normal power figures are on your screen right now, and that's what this car normally drives around with, which is still plenty of power, but that boost mode just gives you an extra bit of edge when you're in dynamic mode and taking you off from a standard start, or even just boosting along to try and do an overtake. Come to a complete stop. 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Now cornering is, yep, pretty good. This thing hunkers down. Thanks to that air suspension, we're nice and low, and let's see how those 400mm brakes, well, they're 399 technically, but they're pretty much 400mm brakes. And let's go for an emergency stop in 3, 2, 1, and stops up pretty good for it. SUV that weighs over 2 tons. Wow, that is really impressive. Now the regen also here is really impressive too. You can pull on this paddle and you get a nice amount of regen, and this car can apparently pull up to 250 kilowatts when you're regenning. So that means if you go down a nice twisty hill, it can actually pull a few kilometers back into your range, which is something you'll need. And that's something I have to bring up right now. Now, this is one of the thirstiest electric cars I've driven. I'm averaging around 34.3 kilowatt hours, and that's not driving around in boost mode. That was commuting here to my filming location, which is a few hours away from where I live. And that is really disappointing because that is a very, very thirsty electrical system. This is generating a lot of power, and it's also draining a lot of it at the same time too. I actually had to charge up before getting to my filming location because I just wasn't so sure how this would go going while filming, and then also getting to my secondary location where I usually charge and show you everything you need to know about charging. So just quickly before I jump on the charger and show you how this thing charges, yeah, it is a thirsty electric car. And I'm just unsure if that's because it has a triple motor setup, because I've driven other cars from the Volkswagen group like the Cupra Born, and they've been very impressive with their range, but that was a single motor setup. So I wonder if the triple motor setup is just draining a lot of power from this big battery. Now what I like is that this car carries a lot of the characteristics from Audi's S cars. So I do feel like I'm driving an S product. It really does feel quite proper in that way. It has the big brakes, it has the power, it has the momentum, it has the handling as well. These 22-inch wheels, even though they're humongous, they actually do ride pretty well. Although there is just a little lack of feedback in dynamic mode. I want just a little bit of sound, please, like a sound generator, even if that's an option to tick. I know it sounds ridiculous, but these new electric cars with sound generators coming out are actually pretty cool, like the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, and even the Porsche Taycan has an option for it. So I don't know why it wouldn't be included here on an S model, but maybe that's something that Audi is reserving for their RS models, and the S models just meant to be a little bit faster than your traditional e-tron models. Okay, so So it's time to talk about charging. You're going to be visiting these charging stations more often than not because this isn't a very efficient EV. So the claimed range is 418 kilometers, but I was seeing figures around 350, 360 kilometers as indicated by the car at 100% charge. And it did drain quite quickly thanks to this being quite a thirsty EV. So it means, yes, you will have to visit chargers a bit more often. Now this thing can charge as fast as 30 minutes from 20 to 80% from a charger capable of charging up to 150 kilowatts, because that's the max amount of power that this car can accept through its charging port. But a 50 kilowatt charger in that same time will take around 1 hour and 31 minutes. So it's definitely gonna be a lot slower if you find the more popular 50 kilowatt chargers around your home. Now this doesn't have a small battery, it's 86.5 kilowatt hours, so it seems that Audi's traded a longer range for driving performance because it's put 3 motors in this thing, which for most drivers won't be an issue because if you're spending this much on an electric SUV, you probably already have another vehicle that's better for long range driving. Now while it's cool, this thing does have 2 charging ports. Unfortunately, you can only charge from the right side using a fast charger, but at least at home you have the option to plug in on either side. Okay, so here's the thing. It is an expensive SUV, but it's going right up against things like the Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo and even the BMW iX, and obviously against the Tesla Model X, but you can't buy that anymore. So the price point, yes, it's expensive, but it is right on par with some other high-end electric competitors. Now, it's a brilliant car overall. If you want one of the best driving electric SUVs, this is it. So hopefully when this comes out rebranded as a Q8 e-tron, which it will very shortly, it will get a nice little range bump and hopefully they can fix this to be a bit more efficient. But let me know, do you like the Audi e-tron S Sportback or would you buy something completely different? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. My name's Cameron. This is Product Review Cars. I'll see you in the next one.